Hey, I'm Tyson Hugee. I'm from Philadelphia. I go to Holy Cross and I play LSM. So to kind of understand like my story, you got to go back to middle school where I moved from South Jersey to Philadelphia, and I just completely felt like I had no friends, no one knew who I was, and I remember eating lunch by myself in the middle of the cafeteria alone, and that feeling of being alone kind of stuck with me for years. And I remember a few days after that, a kind of popular kids kind of invited me into their group for some reason. And I knew that hanging with this crowd was better than hanging out with no crowd at all. And I quickly realized that these people didn't really have my best interest in mind. We weren't really alike in any way, but I knew they were popular, so I just wanted to do whatever they were doing. I just wanted to climb that ladder of popularity because I thought that was the most important thing as a middle schooler. Throughout middle school, I kind of gained that popularity a little bit, found my niche in being kind of like a class clown type of funny guy, which caused a lot of problems like with teachers and things like that. And I remember realizing that all these things were never going to be important because I knew that next year as a freshman, no one was going to care if I was popular in middle school. And I remember this was about the time where I started to get kind of picked on for kind of being the outlier in that popular friend group, which definitely hurt my feelings a little bit because these kids were supposed to be my friends, and I heard that they were talking bad about me as we entered high school. I knew that being the funny kid and being disruptive in class wasn't going to lead me anywhere, especially in high school, so I tried to become a pretty good athlete. Like my dream was always to play Division I football at a school and just have a good time being a high school guy. I quickly realized that that wasn't really going to work out for me when I was 5'3", 115 pounds, freshman year, and I just got ridiculed, got pretty bullied by the upperclassmen on the team. And I remember working just as hard as they did, but just because I was undersized, they really didn't really like me that much. Would say things like, "Don't come out to practice, we don't want you here, you're never going to play for us," and basically just told me to quit. But I didn't, I kept with it. And I remember one day after a game, a senior on the team walked up to me and punched me in the face with a cupcake that was in the locker room. And I know it sounds crazy, but at the time it was so traumatizing for a freshman, and it made me feel like I did when I was at that 6th grade lunch table by myself, and I just felt super alone. There were teammates in that locker room who didn't stick up for me, coaches who watched it happen, and no one said anything. And I just felt like I, again, had no friends, had no one to turn to. So I just sat there and cried and was so embarrassed. Around this time, I think, is where guys notice girls, girls notice guys. And the one thing I never could do was talk to a girl, get a girl to like me. And that just added another layer of things that people can make fun of with me. And I remember about halfway during my freshman year, I ended up talking to a girl for the first time, which was the greatest thing ever for me as a 15-year-old. And people really started to make fun of her for talking to a guy like me. And she led me on. She said a bunch of different things, and eventually wouldn't even say hello to me in the hallway, which definitely was a hit to my little selfish 15-year-old heart at the time. This was also the year that I picked up a lacrosse stick for the first time, played defense, and was very below average lacrosse player. At the end of the year, I reflected on what had happened to me this past year and realized I didn't want to be at that school anymore. When the opportunity presented itself for me to transfer to a school in Philadelphia, SCH, Springside Chestnut Hill Academy, I took the opportunity and ran with it. Luckily, I went through a little bit of a growth spurt, got bigger, faster, stronger, heading into my sophomore year at this new school. And I decided I was going to prove all those old bullies wrong, that I was going to be a good athlete, that I was going to be popular. But I was doing all those things for selfish reasons, and I was doing those things for myself. As I started that next year at my new school, I ended up being a pretty decent athlete, got into some games as a sophomore. But the thing that kind of screwed me up the most was that girls actually, for whatever reason, started looking at me in a different way. They were talking to me more, and I didn't know how to handle it. Whatever girl talked to me, I kind of pursued, and then I turned into the guy that would lead girls on and just not treat them in the nicest way. And I earned a reputation pretty fast with not really being a stand-up guy, and I forgot the way I was raised, going to church every Sunday, but I never made that relationship with Jesus a personal thing. I remember I would fall asleep every sermon. I would act like I was sick so I wouldn't have to go. And I had no relationship with Jesus or any God for that matter. I made myself my own God, and I broke that first commandment, and just did whatever I wanted to, and thought I could get away with that. And God kind of let me get away with that for a while before He had to humble me. Throughout my high school career, again, I really wanted to prove all those high school bullies wrong at my previous school, so I would work out multiple times a day, try to get as big and fast and strong as I could so I could play football in college, because that was still the dream. And by my senior year, I had become pretty well known, which is, again, what my main goal was ever since I moved over here in 6th grade. And senior year summer, I commit to play football at Columbia University, and I thought I had accomplished everything I had ever wanted to. I was going to be playing Division I football in New York City for an Ivy League school, and no one could tell me anything. I thought I was the man. I thought I could do whatever I wanted to, and I quickly realized that that's not how life works. By this time, I had a bad reputation just with everyone at school as being just a guy who was pretty self-centered. And sure, like I would talk to girls, I would pursue girls, but I was still feeling pretty empty. And also by this time, I ended up being a pretty decent lacrosse player. So my senior year is what I thought I had dreamed of. My whole high school career and my middle school career, I was an all-state football player, an all-interact lacrosse player, and pretty well known in my school. So I headed off to Columbia that summer, thinking about just the wrong things. I wasn't worried about football. I wasn't worried about school. I was just worried about what the girls were going to look like and what the party scene in the city was going to be. And when I quickly broke my foot that first year in that first game, I kind of realized that the football thing wasn't going to really work out. So I tried to look for validation and fulfillment in many other things. I remember I would go out, go party, and just, again, revert back to my high school ways of just not treating people in the nicest way. And although I met some great people at that school, I definitely did a lot of damage to myself and others, and just wasn't living for any Jesus or any God or anything like that. And I was just a hypocrite. I had a Bible verse in my Instagram bio and my Twitter bio, would wear a cross necklace everywhere I went, and I was tricking people. But I couldn't fool God. God knew my heart, and He knew my heart wasn't set on Him at all. And I was still searching for things of this world to fulfill my spirit instead of having my eyes looking above. And I remember being in my dorm room thinking that people probably thought I was living the life, being at an Ivy League school in the city, playing a sport, being well known. But I remember just having so much inner turmoil and inner anguish inside my body. And I remember being on the 8th floor of my dorm and opening the window and just honestly contemplating if life was worth living. And I had felt like I had done everything I possibly could to search for that happiness and fulfillment, and it all fell short. And I had nowhere to turn. Luckily, I kind of came to my senses, got in my bed and called one of my friends from back home, Tara Quinn, and she told me to open up a Bible. And honestly, those few words that she told me honestly saved my life and put me on a whole new path. And that was the first time I sincerely read the Bible. And like I said, I had a Bible verse in my Instagram bio, but I never sincerely opened the Bible and read it. And this was the first time I did it. And when I read it, couldn't even tell you what I read, but from the gist of it, I understood that I needed to start over because I messed up. I had done some terrible things. I had just committed a bunch of sins, and I was just so far away from God. So I packed up my stuff, didn't even last one semester at Columbia. Packed up my stuff, left in November, and went home. I got home, I sat in my room for about 6 weeks in the dark, didn't leave my room, didn't talk to anyone. I was embarrassed that I was home, barely talked to my family, didn't eat. And then my friend Tara called me again and asked me if I was reading my Bible. And I said no, and she told me I better get on that, and I did. And that's when I discovered the book of Psalms, and I was like, oh, this David guy, he seemed like he had life pretty figured out, had a good life, and then committed a bunch of heinous sins and kind of ruined his life, right? And I was like, that sounds pretty familiar, and I really resonated with him. So I was like, I'm going to read some of the Psalms that he wrote. And I remember I was plugging away reading it one night, and I got lazy and put on the audio version. And I remember just laying down, falling asleep, waking up a few hours late in the middle of the night, and I heard a voice, which obviously was the app on my phone, but I thought there was someone in my room like speaking to me, and I took that to be just the voice of God. And it was just such an eye-opening experience. And I remember sitting in my bed, sitting up and saying, I'm so broken and I'm so dead in my sin. And I've tried everything to make myself happy, and I can't. And I'm done. I'm done doing that. I need saving, and I need your help. And I got saved right there on my bed in the middle of the night in December. And after that, I kind of got up. That kind of gave me the confidence to kind of press play on my life that had been paused for so many months. And I started the whole recruiting process again. And kind of like I said before, I kind of grew into a pretty good lacrosse player in high school. So I reached out because I wanted to play lacrosse again. And I ended up getting some pretty like big name looks, big name offers from like the Denvers, Loyola, Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan. But the pride in my heart was just still wanting me to play football. When Holy Cross football came knocking on my door, I commit and headed there for the summer to work out with the team. I was doing well, getting bigger, faster, stronger, but I just fell back into the same sins that I was falling into before I even knew Jesus, which is just crazy because I thought the day I became a Christian I'd be some good guy, but that's just not the way it works. It felt like I was climbing up 10 feet towards Jesus and then falling down 50 every time I messed up, and it was a struggle. And that's the thing that people don't really understand. Like, Jesus doesn't make you good from bad; He just makes you alive from dead, and that's the thing that I didn't know, and that was just a part of my journey. But now I was doing the same things that I did before I came to Christ, but now the Holy Spirit was really convicting me, and this caused a lot of turmoil in my body again, because as Jesus said, you can't serve two masters, and I was trying to focus on my flesh and the world and focus on God, and you can't do that. So that caused a lot of problems with me that year, where I was questioning, am I even saved? Am I a Christian? Like, what's going on? But just through reading the Bible and getting poured into by my Christian friends, they really helped me with that Christian walk. It was at this time where I was doing a workout. I saw the lacrosse coach at Holy Cross, and he was like looking at me, trying to figure out who I was. And I went up and talked to him, and he remembered that he had actually recruited me in high school to play lacrosse for him. At the time, I didn't have the grades to get in that school, so I kind of said no. But he kind of joked around and said, if you ever want to play lacrosse, we might have a spot for you. And at the time, he was definitely kidding, and I said no because I knew playing two sports at this level just wouldn't be easy. So I kind of denied him. But he asked again a few months later after some of the defenders on the team got hurt, and asked if I wanted to play, and I said yeah. So after spring football ended, I played lacrosse for about 3 weeks with the team, and then our season ended in the Patriot League tournament to a really good Army team. After that, I got sent home. I went home for summer break, and I reflected on the year, and I really thought, like, wow, God, I'm supposed to be this Christian guy, and I did not live a Christian life at all. I fell short so many times, and I hope I didn't tarnish what it means to be a Christian. I hope other people don't see the life I lived and never want to come to know you. So then I typed in Jesus and sports on my search bar and typed it in, and FCA came up, and I got signed up to be a huddle leader at the Kutztown Regional Camp. Worked up there, best week of my life, met some of my best friends, and on the fourth day, I can remember just bawling my eyes out in the chapel service in the middle of the sanctuary for about 40 minutes. And when I looked up, there was no one in there. There was no one. And I remember it wasn't the same as being in that 6th grade table, and it wasn't the same as being in that 9th grade locker room, because there were no humans around, but I felt that peace that passes all understanding, and I knew that Jesus was there the whole time. And that's where I just fell on my knees and cried out that I wanted to live for Him, and I was done living for myself, and I wanted to glorify Him in every situation, even if it meant being persecuted. So when I went back up to school that year, about to be my sophomore year at Holy Cross, I tore my knee apart in the football season, and I really realized, like, although I was mad about it, I couldn't blame God for it, because it made me realize, like, how temporary these sports are and how temporary these material things are. So I really just pressed into Him during that time, and just got ready for lacrosse season. Before lacrosse, I went up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania for the leadership camp, where again, just got poured into like crazy. And I really thought I was on fire for Christ before that, but that camp and those guys that I met were like the gasoline that kind of was thrown onto the fire, and then I was just fully committed to living for Him and making His name known. I got back to school and tried to minister to the people in my locker room, people around campus, and the people in our Bible study, and we ended up getting like 50, 60 people every week, teaching the true gospel, and it was just a blessing. My roommate came to know Jesus, and that was the best thing that's ever happened to me at Holy Cross, by far. And we had a pretty good lacrosse season, got banged up a little bit, and the season got cut short because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I went home, returned home, and I was in that same bed where I gave my life to Christ 2 years before, and just opened up the Bible and started reading James 4. And the fourth verse just hit me right in the face, and it basically says, if you want to be a friend of the world, it makes you an enemy of God, and if you want to be a friend of God, it's going to make you an enemy of the world. So I had to choose, like, who was I going to start living for, my flesh or for the King, and I chose God. And going farther, deeper into that chapter, verse 14 says, "What is your life? It's a mist that appears for a little while and then it disappears." And it's just so true. I lived my life trying to make my name known ever since 6th grade. I wanted people to know who I was. And it definitely didn't work out for me. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering stemmed from that. And I knew if I was living for Him and making His name known and not mine, that was going to make all the difference. And I really knew that I didn't know God was all I needed until that God was all I had. And it's just been a blessing. FCA, my family, my friends, and Jesus has done so much for me. I can never thank Him enough. Over the course of my life, I set a bunch of goals for myself and wanted to check a bunch of boxes that would make me feel happy and feel fulfilled. And once I set out and I actually accomplished everything that I wanted to as a 6th grader, it still wasn't enough. It still fell short, and I still felt empty. We have this God-shaped hole in our heart as human beings that I was trying to fill with a bunch of different things like accolades, material things, and being known to other people. And those things were just in there taking up space. And they quickly fell out, whether that was after a day, after a week, or after a month. It wasn't enough. The only thing that's able to fill that God-shaped hole is a relationship with Him. And in this world, you're going to have trouble. Sometimes you're going to feel like you're at a table alone. Sometimes you're going to hate the school that you're at. Sometimes you're going to feel bullied. Sometimes you're going to feel persecuted. But Jesus says that He's overcome the world and that He's going to be with us. And that's what's made all the difference in my life. And He was chasing me, pursuing me, and His love was chasing after me, even when I was actively running away from Him. And I'm just so grateful for that.